Hi there, folks. Today I have the privilege and pleasure of being joined by Mario Maneco, more well known for his YouTube channel Maneco64. It's the home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So Mario, thanks very much for coming on for a chat. How's things?
You're welcome, and I'm well. Thank you.
That's great. So basically, Mario's been doing this for quite a while, since long before it became popular and more people started delving into this sort of research. And it's probably because, well, Mario's background, he worked in the financial markets in the city of London for over 20 years. And in late November 2015, Mario started his YouTube channel. And I have to start just by thanking you, Mario, because you're pretty much doing videos on a daily basis, keeping people updated with current affairs, events, and different things which are mainly related to economics, but also pretty much everything, and just filling that void where mainstream media are just not doing a good enough job, whether that be intentional or otherwise. So I suppose, first of all, I'd just like to ask you, what was it that inspired you and brought you to the stage where you formed the channel?
I guess we have to go back to around 1999, 2000, when I was still in the city, and I looked at things like the mainstream way, economics and money. I didn't think about what's the monetary system based upon or anything like that. But then you had the dot-com bubble, it burst. And then I started looking more into things around 2000, 2001. I bought my first gold coins in 2002. I started looking into the Austrian School of Economics, free markets, laissez-faire. And the more I delved into those subjects, the more interesting. I saw that everything was connected, free markets, sound money. And the system that we had was basically a fraudulent system. That wasn't where there were no honest weights and measures. And most people don't think that money should have a weight and measure, but it does. Historically, going thousands of years, the name of our currency, pound sterling, used to be a pound of silver. The name dollar used to be because of a silver dollar, and the dollar, Spanish dollar, used to be because of the taler, which was a silver coin. So I got more and more into that, and started becoming quite contrarian with, while I was still working in the city. I was able to impart some of my views to some of my colleagues, and they started looking into it as well. But I would say it was out of 2,000 people in the office, maybe 3 or 4 would look into it. So it was quite lonely. And then I could see that the housing market was becoming the next bubble after the dot-com bubble. I had arguments with colleagues at work. I said one day, I think it was 2005 or 6, we just had the latest budget, and Gordon Brown was reading all the billions he was gonna give away and spend. And I said, well, this country is gonna go bankrupt very soon. And this guy was, what are you talking about? And then eventually everything was unraveling in 08. And I thought, well, this is it. It's all gonna implode. And it was. We were sitting there at our desks watching the share price of all the major banks going towards zero. And then they bailed everything out in 08, 09. And they did it on the back of us, the taxpayer. And we're paying for it now. And eventually I stayed in the city for another 3-4 years after the crisis. In 2012, May 2012, the firm I worked for closed the desk that I was working on down. I was a futures and options broker. I thought of getting another job in the city, but the business was getting different. I only had one or two really good clients, so not a really good client base. And I thought, I'm going to try something different. And I decided to buy into a pawnbroking franchise, and I ran a pawnbroking shop called Cash Brokers for a couple of years, and it went fairly well, but it didn't make a profit. I learned the hard way that there's a lot of costs, business rates, and I couldn't even employ someone to help me out. So luckily, my wife said, you need to close this down, and it was a good idea. And so that was by the end of 2014, I got out of that. And then I had to reassess things. I tried to get back into the city. I was kind of offered a position, but then it didn't work out. And then by 2015, I was like looking at things, and I had started watching YouTube quite a bit. My daughter told me about YouTube a few years before. And actually, I was listening to Jay Snip 4. I don't know if you heard of him. And I thought he was interesting because he was just a normal guy like us talking about things. He was telling of his experience during the 08 collapse, how he walked away from his home and didn't have to pay anything. And I thought I could do what this guy does, just talk to people. And at the time, I think he had 28,000 subscribers. And I thought, what can I talk about that I know about, I'm passionate about, I have experience in? And I thought, well, the markets, economics. And my idea was to talk to the general public as I used to talk every morning when I got to the office to my clients. And my clients, they were institutional clients, they weren't private clients. So I thought if I could explain to the public about the nitty-gritty of the financial markets, like stocks, bonds, derivatives, interest rates, precious metals, and give them like a more of a detailed, basic understanding of everything, that it would help them to understand what was going on. Because in the mainstream media, it's all very superficial. You get the news and they say, oh, the FTSE was up 30 points, the pound was down, and they just look at that every day, and they don't look at the history, what's been happening. And yeah, so that's how I got the idea. I started late 2015, and yeah, from scratch. And one thing I would say is that once you start, you have to keep going. And that's what I try to do. It's hard sometimes, I guess, to always find a topic to talk about, but of course, somehow I find it every morning, something to talk about.
Yeah, and it's really appreciated and really worthwhile. And obviously, I haven't even checked, but it's I remember quite a while ago you passed the 50,000 subscriber mark. So there's obviously a lot of people out there appreciating the content that you're providing. And I suppose I think I jested to you before we started recording that the slogan that you're using is the home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Now, and what I said to you and what I fully believe is it's not contrarian. Sorry, it's not alternative economics. It's accurate economics in a world which is very much warped in terms of what you're told. And it's, in hindsight, after the fact, it will be seen that it's not alternative economics. It's just reality. So, it is strange that there's so much deception in our world today and falsities and falsehood that, you have to get your information, your reliable information, in such a way as to logging on to YouTube and watching Mario and Billy, his dog, chilling in his living room, but that's the world we're living in today. The other thing that I'm accused of by different friends sometimes is, and I wonder if it's the same for you, it's are you being a contrarian for contrarian's sake? And it's not that at all. I imagine it's just, that's the one thing that I don't understand. Do you think that, do you have any idea as to why it is that, say you were one of 2 or 3 people out of the 2,000 in your firm who understood where we were and where we were heading? Because I was in a very similar boat in my last role, and any of the kind of other financial engineers who I would speak with have no idea where we are and what's coming and why. Why do you think it is that that things are so skewed now in terms of people's knowledge just being way out of whack when it comes to economics?
Yeah, I think it's the education and maybe the way we're wired, just the way we are. We're more perceptive. I mean, it's always about asking questions. when you're a little boy or girl, your parents and teachers say, stop asking questions. And I guess I've never stopped asking questions. And I'm of the opinion, yes, you go to university or school and you finish your education. You never finish your education. That's the way I see it. You always need to try to learn different things. And I think the majority of the public, they get a job, a good career, and they don't ask questions. I'm not having a go at them. It's just the way it is. And one of the reasons why I use the term alternative economics and contrarian views is more of a marketing thing, because that's one thing I learned also from other YouTubers, that you have to market yourself and do it every day. Maybe there's a better way, but that's the way I found it. And yes, economics. I always like to talk about the origins of word or etymology, and you go back, and economics in Greek, ancient Greek, just means good housekeeping. And that whole thing has been perverted. I mean, look at how our governments keep their budget. They don't have, they're called treasuries, Her Majesty's treasuries or the US Treasury. They're debtories, right? Because they're full of here with debt. There's no treasure anymore. People think that borrowing and spending is the way forward, that we don't have to produce and save to invest. Yeah, I mean, this is all normal. Like you said, it's normal economics, but nowadays it's, at the moment, it's still alternative. Maybe one day it will be just normal economics, how it should be.
Yeah. Here's hoping, God willing. I suppose so, Mario. As I mentioned to you beforehand, you sort of build up a community whenever you're doing a channel like yours, whereby you're kind of incrementally adding to the knowledge bank every so often. For someone who's listening today who doesn't follow your channel or doesn't follow any alternative economics channels, what would be like the one or two or three main things? Like, if you could just grab a person in the street, or an ordinary person now, being like, look, these are really important issues that are happening in our world today, and here's a couple of solutions that could really help look after you and your family and your loved ones. What would be one or two of those things?
Well, one of the first things I would do that would be really simple, and I've done that with people before, friends and like people I meet sometimes, is just take out a banknote and ask them to read what it says here under the Bank of England. I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £10, and explain to them that this is just a promise and that there's nothing behind it. And when you tell people that, they go, wow, that really, and then you try to explain to them the origins of money, and it's really basic. They make it seem that you have to go to Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard to learn about economics, but it's really simple. It's just, money is just an easier way to exchange goods and services that are valuable. It's the most marketable commodity, and you explain that to them, that it used to be maybe shells or cows or salt, and eventually graduated to little pieces of metal like gold and silver. Yeah, and then they'll kind of understand, wow, there's something wrong with the system. And the other thing I would say is that maybe it's better to live within your means than to try to just have the newest car and buy the biggest house and put yourself in debt. Even though I did take a mortgage when I started out in the early to mid 90s, but I would say I took it to buy a home. And most people nowadays, they want to buy a house and get a mortgage because they want to make money. That's the wrong thing as well. So yeah, tell them, look at the money. Well, we call this money, but it's actually a promissory note. Prior to World War I, 1914, you could actually exchange the £10 note for 10 sovereigns, gold sovereigns. And now, if you call the Bank of England, then anyone can do this. They can get the number for the press office and talk to someone there and say, what do you pay us with? And they'll say, oh no, this is just so that if the note gets damaged, you can get new ones. And it doesn't make sense. And when you tell people that, it kind of clicks and they start thinking. And it's something very simple anyone can do.
Yeah, it's a bit like Mike Maloney in the States. He says he's always adamant and angry when people refer to what you just held up as money. You know, he says that's not money. He's like, gold and silver or money, that's just currency.
Yeah,
you know? And then
it is currency. Yeah, it's funny because I used to work at Citibank for a couple of years on their futures side. And when we went for business trips, like to Italy, we went to Italy a lot. I remember the secretary used to say, oh, you need to get your currency before you go to Italy, meaning, you know, the Italian lira. That was before the euro. And I'm sure she didn't know the difference, but I think the tradition of the bank is that they called it currency because it wasn't money. So I think the bankers know about that.
Yeah. So I suppose in terms of more immediate future short-term planning, there's a lot of crazy things going on in the world at the moment. What would be like the one or two main things that you would say, you know, if I look at recent videos that you've alluded to, potential blackouts, housing market concerns, potentially even concerns with food supply chains, things like this. What would be the main things that you would say to people? Look, get this on your radar, and this is something that you could practically do, which would potentially, you know, add some security into your life so that if this happens, you'll be good.
Yeah, I think the major thing that I hope people get from when I tell them that, and I'm not trying to scare them, and I guess I've been proven a bit right in the last few months that things are getting, you know, a little bit different, is that you're prepared for it mentally. And I think the other thing is that you don't have to panic. I don't think it's the end of the world. It's just you have to adapt a little bit. You might not be able to get this for Christmas or that. I remember in 1987 when I was in Brazil, and I think it was around the time of my birthday, and there you couldn't get like buy any cakes in the supermarkets, and I think my mother wasn't there. It was just my dad and one of my sisters, and so I went without a cake for my birthday. I was what, I don't know, 23. It didn't matter, you see, if you don't go with a, you know, if there's no birthday cake. And I think that's the thing. And also now all the fuel craziness. I mean, we have a car, but for the last 5-6 years, if I stay at home, I can do everything I need. And if I can't use my car, I'll walk to the small shop and buy a few things. We do have some diesel in the car. I haven't checked how much, but yeah, just try to keep calm. Yeah, keep calm and not panic. Maybe also try try not to plan too far ahead right now, like holidays, because of what's happened the last 18 months. You can't, unless you can get it insured that you might have to cancel it. Try to live within your means, as I always say, because I've had people ask, oh, why not take on a big mortgage? Interest rates are really low. They're going to stay really low. But I'm not sure they're going to stay really low. And even if they stay low, if your budget is really stretched, and it looks like it will get stretched even more now in the winter with energy prices, you could have trouble covering your mortgage, even though interest rates haven't risen. So that's the other thing. Always try to have a budget. You know, sit down with your husband or wife, or if you're on your own, just write down what you earn every month, and then, you know, all your bills, and try to keep within that budget. Try to run maybe a surplus. You know, that's how you can, that's the only way to save, and maybe buy some gold and silver if you're interested as well.
Yeah, a lot of wise things there. I suppose it's a couple of times now you've mentioned that live within your means. And it's the one thing that people, I wouldn't say of this generation, I would say of any generation, no matter how old they are, in this last generation, people have just got to the stage where they just live so beyond their means, as it's become such a consumer-driven society. And then that whole concept of keeping up with the Joneses, now you don't have to turn your neck and look out your window to see the Joneses next door. You just look at your phone. You know, you're looking at Instagram or social media, whatever. As you say, people are constantly trying to buy the latest car or stretch to the greatest mortgage. And yeah, it's people are stretched now in the best case scenario that they have, so that if any of these scenarios happen where, say, there is a hyperinflation, or if there's a real crunch to supply in terms of food supply chains which, you know, pumps up the price of food or fuel or energy, then you're going to be in this scenario where you have the same job with the same income and you have the same debt obligations ultimately. And I think that sort of scenario is only whenever people are going to start seeing their house as a liability, as Robert Kiyosaki would say, as opposed to an asset if it's owned, say, 90% through mortgage. But it's the mentality these days. I remember a couple of years ago, just as one example, one of my friends, now, as you say, you shouldn't get into debt, and I actually regret doing this out of principle more than anything, but I got out a £10,000 loan 3 years ago, the same week that one of my friends did. The difference only being that he was doing it to sell his £4,000 car and add that £10,000 to get a £14,000 car, just so he'd look cool. And I was doing it to buy shares, which have thankfully since done well. But that principle of borrowing to invest, you know, or to fund something that you can't kind of sustain yourself at the moment, you're reaching beyond your means, and then suddenly the risk level is really high there. But especially if it's just for that keeping up appearances type thing, it's not a good way to go. And, you know, that is one thing that I would encourage people, especially as well. Like, just because the sky hasn't fallen in the economy yet, you know, based on all the crazy things that have happened through central banks and government actions over the last year and a half, that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. That just means that it's sooner now than it has been in all these previous months. Like, it's coming. And as Mario was saying, I would attest to that, you know, in terms of just starting to accumulate. Like, anyone, this is the one thing that I would like to do if anyone's watching this. It's like economics is not just about, it's not just for people that have loads of money. It's like, you know, if you can do a small amount of accumulation of silver, which is less than £20 for an ounce of silver, you know, or if you're slightly more affluent than that and you want to start investing in gold, these are things that you can accumulate. Similarly, although much more speculative, it's worth looking into things like cryptocurrency as well. But they are just small action steps that you can take. And then even in terms of, like, I used to giggle at preppers, but prepping, especially now, we can see, like, there are farmers telling us, literally telling people, the food supply chains are dismantled and being dismantled. They haven't got the workers to harvest crops, you know, and there are so many things that are happening, and whether it's through extreme negligence or intentional, potentially insidiously in some sort of warped way, we're definitely heading to a scenario where food's going to be much more of a scarce resource in the way that we've recently seen it. And as soon as any resources supply goes down and the demand remains constant, the price shoots up. That's just the way it works. So yeah, these things are things which people need to be thinking about. So do you want to just touch on the blackouts thing? Is something that you mentioned, but I think in one video recently, but not a lot of people are talking about this. And I suppose you're sort of predicting that there may be blackouts in the UK anyway, potentially further afield.
Wow. Yeah, one of the reasons I mentioned that is because my wife, she grew up here in the 70s. I was in Brazil, so she knows. She told me that they used to have blackouts here, or that after 10 o'clock, everything would go off. You couldn't watch television anymore. So I think it's possible, because what we're seeing now is that just like with individuals, if you look at individuals and their households, they have a lot of people have a lot of huge mortgage. They finance their cars. They've got credit card debt, and they've got their income, and they're just getting by. But if something happens and that income doesn't come in, everything just collapses within their little economy. And I think the whole the big economy, so to speak, the big corporations, the utilities. I just found out from reading about the petrol shortage that Shell, for example, they don't have their tankers to drive their petrol or diesel to the forecourts. They outsource to a company, and this company has had trouble finding drivers. So everything is like outsourced. The companies, they buy parts from the other side of the world to make a widget here in the UK. And if a country in Asia, if they have a lockdown, because I've seen now that it's getting worse there, this disease, and it affects everything. And I think that's what we've had. And I think the monetary system, based on that, encourages this kind of supply chain, everyone running on credit. Also, like you find out that the big supermarkets, for example, and big high street shops, they don't own any of their the properties where they have their shops. It's all rented. And that's why the government had to bail them out last year. That's why we had a huge budget deficit, because everything is based on credit. And if they hadn't done that, the whole thing would have imploded. And that's why I think it's not out of the realms of possibility that come this winter, they're going to say, well, we can only keep the electricity, the lights going till 10 p.m. After that, you're going to need candles. It's not impossible that could happen. And I guess I haven't been a prepping channel, but I would say that maybe it's time to buy things that you usually need. Buy a bit more of it. That's what Arpad from Starpath Academy told me. I don't know if you know about his channel. He survived through the hyperinflation in Romania in the 90s. So simple things like, you probably don't need shaving gel, but I do.
You know what's really funny? I actually shaved just before we came on here.
Oh, did you?
I was bleeding afterwards, so I was like, oh, I better not be bleeding whenever I'm recording here.
Yeah, but yeah, that just little things. I think you just buy a bit more than things that, don't go out there, of course, panic buy, but just keep in mind that you might need a little more supplies of things. And they're just simple things. I can't tell what someone needs every day. They need to know that themselves. So yeah, that's why I don't think it's impossible. And we're seeing now that in China, they're having blackouts because they have a shortage of energy as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I suppose you've touched on housing a couple of times there as well. Average Jane or Joe blogs would come and say to you, Mario, they're just going to print anytime there's any problems. House prices are only going to go up. We have to rush in now to buy this house while we can, as you said, with this really low interest rate, and they're going to stay low, so things are great anyway. And house prices are only going to go up because all they ever do is go up, and have done is gone up, so they're just going to go up. And my parents' generation said that it's a good investment because it'll always go up, so it must just always go up. What would you say to that person today?
Yeah, I mean, they're right in a way, because I think the average house price was £2,500 back in the 60s. And now it's over 200,000 or something like that. But yes, the problem about it has been going up a lot because we've been in a fiat currency system. So the currency goes down, the value of real things goes up. But there are times when there are recessions, corrections, crises. And if you can survive through that, if you're okay with 90% mortgage and you think you can survive that, that's fine. But all I'm trying to say is try to be cautious. my wife, before I met her, she bought her own flat. I think it was in the early 90s before I arrived here. And she said her first mortgage was 14, 15% she used to pay, but she could afford it. She had a pretty good, well-paying job. But people who are, I saw there's a mortgage deal a couple of weeks ago, the lowest in the UK, 0.79%. How much lower is that going to go? I don't think it's going to go that much lower. There's only upside to it. So be careful. Yeah, try. It's hard. I know it's hard, but maybe try to move somewhere where the house values are lower. A lot of people nowadays can work from home. Yeah, don't try to move to where you can't afford it as well. Even though I got a message from one of my viewers from up north that I think it's near Newcastle. Someone put a house up for sale for 220 and it went for 320. I mean, crazy.
That just shows where we are, though. That in,
Yeah.
if that in itself doesn't scream alarm bells, you know, what does? So let me think here. In terms of yeah, your friend Janet Yellen has done some interesting things, over the last.
My friend.
Yeah, that's sarcastic, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
One thing, which is potentially going to be, because I'm just looking at what's going to be the kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, or what's going to be the kind of the little torch to light the paper. Tax on unrealized gains is something that's been discussed now recently for the first time ever. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you think that will actually impact markets if it comes?
Yeah, I think that's pretty crazy. I would say it's like unrealized profits. I think just thinking about it would be disastrous for stock markets, I would say. But yeah,
not much of this
because
scares me, but that scares me.
Yeah. But what else? I mean, the other thing about the camel's back and maybe the little snowflake that starts the avalanche, it could be, the budget impasse in the US. I was just reading about it this morning, and it doesn't look like, it looks like they're going to leave it to the last minute. And people are warning about this. And what people need to understand, not just in the US, for the whole world, if you think of where liquidity comes from, it comes from the US dollar. And the US dollar, the other side of the dollar is the bond market. The bonds are money. They're debt, but the other side of the US Treasury debt is the dollar. And if there is a default, even for a week or two, and investors lose confidence, the whole liquidity for the financial system everywhere around the world could dry up, and you could see, I don't know, it would be something, it would make maybe March last year look a bit like a picnic. They might have to close markets. You might not be able to sell any of your stocks or bonds. There will be no liquidity. There will be no money, right? Because I'm thinking about Mike Maloney. There will be no currency out there. So I saw that Jamie Dimon is warning about that. So he must be concerned. He said they're leaving it too close. Not that I respect him, but it would probably be a good thing. It would probably just expose the fact that this fiat currency system can't keep going as it is, because the debt is really insurmountable and can never be paid. So maybe this could be a blessing in disguise, but it would be a huge collapse. And that's the biggest thing that I see that could be a problem, or the straw that breaks the camel's back, or the snowflake that starts a massive avalanche. And I think Janet Yellen said that they've got until 18th of October. That's when the money will completely run out for the US Treasury, unless the politicians can find a way out. And do you think, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the other guys, the Republicans, really know about how things work, that it could completely implode the system? I don't think they're too aware. They're too arrogant, and they have so much hubris that they think, oh, we can sort this out. But the fiat currency is all based on faith and confidence, and people lose faith and confidence, even for a week or two. It could be bad news.
Yeah. So one last really kind of important concept that people are discussing more these days is freedom. Wonder just in general, what are your thoughts in terms of, because I saw a quote there from Benjamin Franklin saying something like, anyone who forgoes his freedom in the name of safety deserves neither freedom nor safety. Biden recently came out saying, this is not about your freedom, this is about your safety. And this is the kind of our leaders, the politicians that are serving us all around the world today. In my view, those who are doing well for whatever reason are so far away from Renaissance men of the past, of critical thinkers who understand not just, oh, we'll pull this lever because it seems like the best one to do now, but we're really lacking the sort of leaders who understand that if I do this, then this will happen, and then this will happen, and then this will happen. This will be the ultimate consequence. And for me, then I would just see any threat to freedom as being pretty much the worst thing that could happen to any of our societies today. And it's one of those things which we need to hold on to the most. But for whatever reason, in our current generations, we've forgotten the lessons of the past, and we know so little about it. So is this something that's a concern of yours, or do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember speaking with my sister last year when the whole COVID thing was starting out, and she's in Switzerland, and I actually told her about that Benjamin Franklin quote about safety or security, and she said, "Oh, you're exaggerating." And I said, "Well, okay," but now she doesn't see it that way anymore. She's aware of it, but yeah, nowadays you could change that Franklin quote to health, right, instead of security or safety. And unfortunately, a lot of people are dependent on the system. They just want to get along, and they just want to take their holidays. A lot of people depend. They need to keep their jobs, even though legally it's not really clear cut. But no, I do think about it a lot, and I think there are a lot of people who are aware of that, and I think usually people don't learn from history. There's very few people who do, but sometimes a small percentage of the population can grow exponentially, and that's the hope I have. The other hope I have is that the powers that be, they're doing things that are so in your face that even the people who are not aware of Ben Franklin or what the loss of freedoms, they might wake up. So yeah, that's how I see it. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to do as much as I can without following their directives.
Yeah, same here. So I suppose lastly, you're very eclectic on the book front. Books are, yeah. It's only been the last few years that I've really, I suppose, thanks to a social media influencer guy, Ty Lopez in America, for helping me to understand the importance of reading books. It's a strange thing, especially in this generation, again, that people just think that books are a thing of the past, or we can just get everything from YouTube, or it's not the case. I've learned so much more from the 30 books behind me, just in terms of the framework of my mind, understanding, oh, so this is the way society should be built, for example, and this is why, and this is historically what happened. So they are fascinating and continue to fascinate me more and more each day. What would you have one or two books in mind that you would recommend for viewers to read?
Yeah, I mean, one of the books that really changed the way I thought about government and freedom was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I read that in 1999, around the time when I started looking into laissez-faire and freedom, free markets. What's the other one? Yeah, Fiat Money, Inflation in France by Andrew Dickson White. I first read that probably 2003 or four. I think it was recommended by James Turk, yeah, years ago from Gold Money. And I think that you read that book and you can see, I've been seeing the symptoms for the last 10 years of what's happening. And I think it's accelerating what we're going through now. People are going to find in that book, it's about 1790s revolutionary France, their troubles with finance, authoritarianism, the revolution. It's all getting very familiar. So yeah, those two. What other one? I don't know. There's so many. Oh yeah, the other one would be the Mandibles, which was recommended a couple of years ago by one of my viewers, by Lionel Shriver. She's a lady. Her name's Lionel, but she's an American, and she writes about a dystopian United States in about 10, 15 years from now. But it's weird because I read it in 2019 and it's becoming more and more like the Mandibles. It's about a family. So yeah, so those three books. I also like reading novels and historical novels as well. You know, not just academic or economics books. For the British viewers, if they love their history, I recommend C.J. Sansom. He's an author who wrote the Shard Lake series, and it's about Tudor England and the hunchback lawyer who's like a detective as well. It's really great. It's like there's 7 books. I've read all of them there. So
brilliant. Thanks very much for those. Suppose last thing to try and finish in something positive. Is there anything that you're particularly looking forward to in the short to medium term?
Playing a lot of golf. No, I'm joking.
Both in
yeah,
where you are and Belfast.
Yeah, it looks quite windy there as well. Like here, it's cooler today. It's the first time this fall. Well, we've only had fall for about a week. That it feels like fall or autumn. No, I mean, joking aside, I guess no. Looking forward to just trying to get the message out there about real economics, as you say, you know, about what's going on and trying to help people. That's all. And trying to switch off from a lot of the scaremongering. I think, yeah, things are a lot better than you know, sometimes it seems. And I do know that the topics I talk about seem, how can I say, negative, but I look at them more as realistic and trying to help people find out more about, like you say, economics and having a good household, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like people always say that to me. Why are you always talking about depressions and being negative? I just look at it like I'm just trying to learn as much as I can about what's happening, regardless of how I feel about it. You know, you don't have a feeling towards it. It's just, this is where we're going. This is why we're going. And if I learn this, it can help, you know? So
yeah. And I think knowing all these things and how things work, you can ignore all the scaremongery from politicians or central bankers, because you know that they're just like they're just trying to set an agenda.
Yeah, 100%. Right, well, Mario, we'll leave it on that positive note. Thanks very much for your time today. I hope Billy's well. By the way, I don't see him. How's he keeping?
He's well. He was here earlier, but he was asleep and he was snoring a lot. So my wife took him. He's in the other living room with her. Yeah, he's fine. He's sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have a miniature Schneider, Fred, so I'm going to have to like reshuffle the the back shot here and get him chilling on the bed beside me or something. It's nice for me.
Yeah, my wife had the idea of putting him on the sofa a few years ago, and it's worked out well. Yeah.
Funny. Well, listen, thanks so much, and speak soon.
You're welcome, Luke, and it was nice talking with you.
Brilliant. Cheers.